Chapter 3 Kael. Peace and celebration filled the years of our tribe in the wake of victory. Reisenbow had triumphed over two great perils of the world. The dreaded Trickler was no more, and the forces of Verda had been defeated utterly, the odds a staggering 40-1. My mother and father were of the first generation born in the wake of Verda's assault, what was to be the golden age of the Divide. I was born at the peak of this golden age, in the days following the festival of harvest. My mother was a true maiden of our people. Slender of build, she was fair-skinned with thick locks that swayed from her frizzled mass of jet-black hair. Her eyes were a radiant golden brown, and glowed around the fire as if they were distant embers themselves. Her smile was thin and wide, especially when she was furiously engaged in a spar with my father. She was the daughter of Darius the Great, who had fought bravely against the forces in the West Mines, having also fought to slay the dreaded Trickler. The oldest of 3 daughters, many joked that she was Darius' only son. Miriam was her name, but my father called her Little Raven. Darius had fought alongside Kragar the Proud, my father's father, during the battle against the slavers of the West Mines. The two had survived the ordeal together, and a strong kinship between houses ensued. As a result, my mother and father spent their youth playing together as frazzled wildlings. The two were fated, it seemed, paired long before the coming of age. From their first steps as wildlings, the two were said to be inseparable, a most troublesome duo. They were fierce competitors, especially when it came to sparring. Combat efficiency became an integral study among the Divide, and my mother prided herself on her ability to match the youngest son of the proud Kragar, who in his own time grew to be known as Creighton the Mighty. My oldest memories recall what little I knew of my mother from my earliest years. I remember her dark hair and the sweetness of her voice. When we woke in the early mornings, my father would playfully pick at my mother and me as we huddled together under the furs of our simple bed. After he had his fun picking at us, he would spring from the low-lying bed of straw stuffed hides to ready himself for the hunt. Waking was my favorite part of the day. There in the comfort of her arms against the soft furs, I would gaze into the fire pit at the center of our simple domed hut. The coals burned low, sending a gentle torrent of warmth through the crisp morning air. We were always together and warm with the first light each morning. I would lie there with my mother for a little while longer while father readied himself. Then we too would rise and greet the day. Once we had all risen, mother would prepare a quick breakfast while I battled my father just outside the hut. Even as a young man, I wouldn't have stood a chance against him, but as a wildling I knew no limits. I gave it my best, charging the hulking giant that was my father with little stick sword in hand. No fear. My father was a good sport, putting up just enough fight each time that I felt victorious in my lessons, as though I had faced the monsters of legend. My ego as a wildling was as big as it ever would be. Humility would bring growth in the years to come. Once she finished inside the hut, mother would partake in the fun as well. Whatever battle we were enacting, she would join the fray before we gathered for breakfast. Swift and diligent in her offensive, my mother was just as formidable an opponent as my father, known for her skill with knives. Breakfast was usually a tasty grain porridge of sorts, flavored with jams and sweet bits of dried fruit, served steamy and warm. Once we had our fill of play, we took our seats around the fire where our clay bowls awaited, brimming with delicious steamy goop. As we sat around the fire pit enjoying our meal, my father would boast to us of the hunt ahead and the kill he was sure to make later that day. There was always something outlandish, usually along the lines, "I'll kill 10 leagues of Hatul with my fist alone and bring back the most beautiful furs you've ever seen." There was little in the way of wrestling beasts or collecting colorful pelts on his day-to-day, but he and the other hunters rarely came home empty-handed. My mother and I would antagonize him, playfully calling his bluff. He would jokingly growl his rebuttals, promising his word held true as Creighton the Mighty. After the meal, my father would retrieve his massive bow from where it rested in the rafters. He was tall and broad at his shoulders, brawny even in his youth. The rafters were low, hanging just above his head. In some places they brushed the unruly locks of his dark hair that frizzed out in all directions each morning. Before the hunt it would be lazily bound to hang at his back. His bow was a true work of mastery. It was robust and a bit heavier than most, but in power and beauty it was unparalleled. My father was gifted in his abilities with a carving knife, and he had artfully crafted many intricate works into the bow's sleek wooden surface. With warm wishes and affections bared, he would leave to join the hunting party. Usually the parties would rally at the southeastern edge of the village, where the great boughs of the tree loomed high above the ridge like a low sky of vegetation. Once the light of day reached into the shadows under the canopy, each hunter would speak a blessing, wishing his brothers both safety and success in the hunt ahead, accented of course with banter and playful quips. Then off they went, vanishing into the lush green of our world. My mother and I would depart as well, walking hand in hand along the narrow path that led to the center below the ridge. Other huts lined the path, the homes of friends and family. Other children shared the same routine journey, as well as a few late-rising elders. The older children blazed about the trail, bursting and rampant with boundless energy. All were on their way to the village center, where the elders chatted amongst themselves as they awaited the arrival of their children's children each morning. The aging faces of my grandparents were brimming and warm when they greeted us around the fire circle each day. My mother would exchange about the latest happenings before bidding us farewell to join the others tending the crops along the river. Many a family circle gathered between the ridges, more children spilling from all directions into the social trough at Reisenbow's center. The smell of smoke and food permeated the air, as leftover bits of meat roasted on skewers along the blackened stones of the fire. Baskets of bread were kept near the sitting stones around each fire pit, snacks to carry us through the day. Later, there would be fresh fruit as well. Wildlings spent their morning hours in the watchful eyes of the elders. Fortune smiled upon me, as I was blessed to have many years with great aunts, uncles, and grandparents. There was my grandfather Darius, grayed and slightly hunched. He was humble and wise, as he had seen much in his time. He was usually in the company of his old friend Kragar the Proud. In age they were years apart, but they may as well have been brothers. The two old men argued philosophy relentlessly to pass the time. Some conversations became somewhat redundant over the years, but they were never the same twice. From them came lessons of the mind, and stories of the brave hunts of their youth. Stories of war were saved for the oldest sons and daughters, to be told by the late light of the fire. These lessons grew far more somber in nature with the coming of age. There was also my grandmother Diala, my mother's mother. She had dark silver hair that had been much like my mother's in her youth. She was a frail-looking woman, with soft leathery skin and deep eyes that hinted at her wisdom. A black shawl draped about her slumped shoulders to hang down just below her knees when she stood, which she did only out of necessity. She offered sweetbreads and stories of romance and adventure, told in the comforting sound of her soft aged voice. She rarely entered the debates brewed between Darius and Kragar, but when she did, things got wonderfully entertaining. She was a healing warmth, and Darius was proud to have her at his side all his years. My father's mother was Helena, and she was every bit the female equivalent to Kragar. She was a large-built woman, broad at both her hips and shoulders, and just as loud and boastful as any of the men. She prided herself on keeping a watchful eye on the wildlings running amok, claiming to know each and every whelp by name and family. Quite the bluff, but one no wildling dared to test. The thudding stomp of her flat foot on the packed earth and her deep rumbling voice were more than enough to put a stop to any unruly behavior. She was the wildling authority on the east side of the gully.